Good morning. It's July 31, 2020. It's a Friday. Thank God we made it to another Friday and we made it to the end of the month. I hope you are all healthy, doing well, and cheerful in spite of all the challenges that we have. And today, uh, before I do anything, good morning. I'm Cito Beltran, and this is the program agenda. Welcome, and please join us for the rest of the more next hour at least when we give you the news. When I say an hour, because there's a report that President Duterte may be speaking to the nation at 9 o'clock this morning. Give or take a few minutes, but we still have to really firm that up, and we will advise you as to when that happens. In any case, for those of you who are watching us via Facebook or YouTube on One News PH, might I suggest that you subscribe to Signal TV, where viewers are watching us on channel 8 and 250, because today is also the day when the NBA starts to play on Signal TV. In any case, we will have an interesting lineup because today we're going to ask several experts, well, two experts, to react to what's been going on. First, we will be speaking with Professor Herman Kraft, chairperson of the UP, University of the Philippines, DIliman Department of Political Science, and we will be asking him about the statements made by President Duterte in the State of the Nation address, particularly with regards to China, the his being inutil in confronting China about territories, etc., and the fact that even some of the supporters of President Duterte have been reacting rather unhappily about the president's statements. Let's find out about Chinese history, Chinese engagement, Chinese occupation, bully tactics, etc. Then we'll speak with Dr. Mark Castillo of the Makati Medical Center Emergency Department, because Dr. Mark is in the front line and we'd like to find out what's going on in their situation, how full are they, and if we have the lowest number of deaths relative per million, relative terms, what are doctors doing right, and what should be the situation as far as those who may contract the disease? Because there's this debate: come immediately, go immediately, have yourself tested, etc., etc. And depending on whether schedule permits, we will also be doing a special feature on a new program on One News PH on Signal TV. And okay, let's go to the news for today. Here are the stories from the front page of the Philippine Star. Chief Implementer of the National Policy Against COVID-19, Carlito Galvez Jr., says that the government's pandemic plan is now in its critical phase. Galvez says that at this time, aggressive testing and isolation of infected persons are needed. He also said that the local government units will get a bigger share of the response burden or responsibility, particularly in localized or granular lockdowns. Aside from this, the chief implementer adds that the strategies of detention, isolation, and treatment will be given to the LGUs for their implementation. Still on the pandemic response, the government says it will open 22 mega quarantine facilities for mild and asymptomatic COVID-19 patients in the National Capital Region. Deputy Chief Implementer of the National Policy Against COVID-19, Vince Dizon, said these new facilities will augment the current 2,700 hotel beds that the government is paying for. The facilities will be ready in 2 to 3 weeks as the number of asymptomatic cases continue to rise. In other news, former congressman and fugitive for over 8 years, Ruben Ecleo Jr., has been arrested as he fell into the hands of the police. Ecleo said that he has grown tired of hiding. Ecleo, who has been the most wanted person in the list of the Interior Department, is convicted of parricide in 2011 for taking the life of his own wife. He is also facing three anti-graft cases before the Sandigan Bayan. And finally, an official of the Commission on Human Rights warns that the government may face sanctions from the international community if it pushes through in restoring capital punishment. CHR Commissioner Karen Gomez Dumpit says the Philippines is a signatory to International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This treaty commits to abolish the death penalty, and the Philippines ratified it back in 2007. Dumpit says while we can challenge this treaty, doing so will impact trust and confidence on the Philippines in the future agreements. Okay, and those were the major stories on the front page of the Philippine Star. Just a quick reaction to the CHR. We were trying to schedule them for today. Maybe we'll do it for next week because right now, perhaps what the Commission on Human Rights should focus on are the locally stranded individuals. Yesterday, I heard one of them say, "Ako ay tiga Mindoro, karapatan kong makauwi sa bayan ko." And that really rung, a chord in me. I mean, struck a chord in me because, it is the right to domicile, the right to travel, and why is the Commission on Human Rights not attending to that? Because a lot of people are trapped, a lot of people are stranded, they're suffering, and no one is representing them. Ang nangyayari po, ang media na lang ang nagsasalita, nagbo-broadcast, nag-feature, tapos sa amin naman nagagalit yung mga mayor at gobernador. Kasi hindi nila naintindihan na karapatan din ng kanilang mamamayan makauwi sa kanilang bayan. In any case, we will discuss that in the future, perhaps next week. Now, in the meantime, let's go to our first guest. He is the chairperson of the UP DIliman Department of Political Science. He has published articles and book chapters on issues concerning ASEAN, regional security in Southeast Asia, security sector reform, and intrastate conflict in the Philippines. Let's bring in Professor Herman Kraft of UP. Professor Herman, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Cito. Hi.
Okay.
And good morning to all our viewers.
Yeah, just to put everything in perspective, we've invited you to share your expertise kasi maraming sinabi si Presidente Duterte during the SONA and that are now being challenged, questioned, or frowned upon even by his supporters and associates in politics. First of all, President Duterte said, "We are not prepared to go at war with China regarding territorial disputes." In your realm, is this just a statement that you could just say? Because, this is the President of the Republic making that statement in the State of the Nation address. And I'm like, ano yan? Is there cause for concern? Or wala, salita lang yan, Professor Herman?
Well, let's be honest. This has been his line as far as the South China Sea issues that we've had with China is concerned, right? Ever since he actually became president, he has always made this statement that we are not in a position to actually go to war with China over the disputed the claims that we're actually making in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea. The problem here is this. As president of the Philippines, you're not really supposed to, no, it's very difficult to actually say that we're not in a position to defend our sovereignty. Essentially, that's what it comes down to, and that's not a very good thing to hear from your own president, right? And so when you mentioned this that there has been a lot of reactions to it, even coming from those that support the president. I think there is some concern about the implications of President Duterte seeming willingness to not to do anything, no, as far as what's going on in the South China Sea. And like I said, this is not something that we expect of the president, no, of the country, and certainly not something that we've heard from any president in the past, for that matter.
Professor Kraft, I'm just wondering, kasi parang naiisip ko parang Miranda rights ito, na anything you say can be and will be used against you in a court of law. Is it possible that anything the president says in a SONA or in a public function, official statement, can be used against any petition or action we take to the international court against China or any country for that matter?
Well, in this context, now, action speaks louder than words, right? So he may
Mhm.
say these things, right, but it doesn't really mean that the Philippines is giving up on its claims, for instance, right? In other
Mhm.
words, that's the reason why we've been saying that it is important that we actually issue protests on actions undertaken by China or any other country for that matter, no, that impinges on our sovereignty. So, sa madaling sabi, kung titignan natin yung anong yon, yung sinasabi niya na yon will probably not matter, if you
Mhm.
will, as far as our standing in the international community on the official claims that we actually make, because even as he talks about it in the SONA, there are other official actions that we take that more or less, if not counters, no, what the president actually says, no, is officially indicative of our position on not giving up on anything at all, right? So
So, so what we say and what we do can be two totally distinct things, not necessarily to be taken as a whole.
that's right. Yeah. And although of course, and I think part of the concern that we have is precisely that this might be used against us. But then again, we can always point to other things that we actually do that more or less neutralizes, know, what the president is actually saying.
Okay. Personally, Professor Kraft, what got my attention was when President Duterte recalled or reminded us of what's happened in the past, particularly World War II, where because of our allegiance or alliance with the United States, we became victims to Japan's aggression. Okay. Now, ang tanong ko, can you please put it in perspective? Kasi, okay, allies tayo ng Amerika during World War II, but as I recall, Japan also invaded other countries who were not necessarily allies of the United States. Now,
Yeah,
am I correct in that in memory? And number two, does a relation, we don't even have a relationship. I know we have a treaty with the United States that
that's
does
right.
really, does that still make us a target for aggression in the future?
Um, I think as far as your last question is actually concerned, no,
Mm.
um, we are already a target, no, but we're a target for political maneuvers by the Chinese. In other words, for them,
Mhm.
the idea of being able to pull us out of uh, this official treaty that we have with the United States would be a win for them, right?
Mhm.
And I think in their calculation, uh, the best chance that they have to gain, to be able to register this win is while President Duterte is president, meaning to
Mhm.
say that the very positive notes that he actually sends, no, towards China, and the way that he's actually framed his preferences, no, in terms of our relationship with the great powers, no, seems to indicate to them that as long as that if they want to score points, no, major political points, no, in this rivalry with the United States, one of those things that they can actually, one of the, well, it's not exactly a low-hanging fruit at this point in time, but they're probably seeing that there's an opportunity for them with President Duterte as president, not to try to actually get us to move away from the United States, not closer to China.
Mhm.
And if they're able to do that, no, that's a win for them. And that's actually something that the United States, it's sort of a political black eye for the United States if that actually happens
Okay, but the question now is, it may be a win for China, but is it a win for the
for the
Philippines?
Philippines.
Or are there other countries? Because I remember in the past, about 2, 3 years ago ba yun, I don't know if it was Laos, Cambodia, one of those countries in the ASEAN na kumampi sa China
Mm.
and pinagtulungan nga ng ASEAN na sa asar. But is it beneficial? How does it benefit any country, or has any country benefited from aligning with China?
Well, to be fair to the case of Cambodia and Laos, for that matter, within ASEAN, no,
Mm.
they've been benefiting from Chinese economic assistance, no, for the longest time. Cambodia has one of the weakest economies in Southeast Asia at this point in time, and to a large extent, the Cambodian economy is very much dependent on assistance provided by external benefactors, and a major one is China for them. So, in other words, if you're going to look at what Cambodia did, and we're talking about the 2012 chairmanship of Cambodia, where during the ASEAN meeting there was no joint communique that actually came out, right?
Mm.
Because they blocked the kind of language that we wanted to actually put in that would be critical of China's activities in the South China Sea.
Precisely.
So when they did that, no, it didn't show well, or it wasn't something that boded well for ASEAN. It was the first time that no joint communique came out of these kinds of things. But to try to understand Cambodia's position, it was already at that point in time very much dependent on China as far as economic largesse was actually concerned. Now,
Mm.
the question, however, is if we're looking at the Philippines, no, are we in the same boat? In other words, are we already? Is there anything for us to gain, no, as far as getting closer to China is concerned? And I think that's the calculation being made by the president, right? And even during the SONA, he did mention. I mean, if you're talking about a specific world leader that he actually mentioned, it was the name of Xi Jinping that actually came out, and it came in the context of asking for help as far as the provision of a vaccine, no,
Mm.
was actually concerned. So when he said, I think when President Duterte said that a vaccine is just around the corner, right? I think he was actually counting on China being able to provide that, or being able to beat everybody else as far as the race towards a vaccine
But
is concerned.
but has China delivered as far as the expectations and promises go? Has China fulfilled the wish list of Rodrigo Duterte?
Actually, no. I would argue that hasn't happened, because his wish list, as far as China was concerned, was based on, or at least one of the major things was, of course, the cornerstone of the Duterte administration has always, as far as economic development is concerned, excuse me, was always about build, 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 which means infrastructure, which actually
Mm.
fits into what China exports, right? With
Yeah.
the Belt and Road Initiative and all of these things, their specialty is actually on infrastructure, and that's
Mm.
that's the core of the. So there's a good fit, in terms of plans, right? The initiative from China, and then
Mhm.
the economic plan of the Duterte administration. But that was ever since the start, right? So we're talking about 3 years now, and the
Yeah.
question is, how much have we actually benefited from Chinese investments, no, in government projects, no? We're still talking about just two projects that China is involved in, the Kaliwa Dam, no, and others that are actually coming up. Um, and these are hardly, I think, projects that have actually started, right? In other words, it's still proceeding very slowly. So if you're asking, are we seeing any major successes in terms of uh, this desire on the part of the president, no, to involve the Chinese much more in our economy? I think at this point in time, we're still seeing groundwork being done, no, as far as Chinese involvement in the Philippine economy is concerned. So
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
in that sense, I wouldn't say that we can actually argue that we've already benefited quite a bit. It's still more of a promise than anything else.
Yeah. So what is it? What is it that drives President Duterte to embrace Xi Jinping and essentially give up our claim or our territories in the West Philippine Sea?
That's a very difficult uh, question to actually answer, in the sense that it requires us to actually understand the thinking of the president at this point in time, as far as China is concerned,
Mm.
because it would
Because Professor,
yeah,
if we're talking vaccines,
yeah,
America is developing the vaccine, UK is developing the vaccine, Russia is
yeah,
allegedly coming out with the vaccine by August this year or
right,
registering the vaccine. So it's not like China has the sole possession of a rare solution.
yeah,
So you kind of wonder because when President Duterte first came to office, people assumed he was playing China
against
against
the United States.
America and then playing Russia against China. Parang he was trying to present himself as a crafty statesman
Strategist,
and,
yeah.
and strategist. But now, even his associates are worried. It's like, wait a minute, hindi na ito laro, hindi na ito biro. Sinasabi mo ng hands up na tayo. Teka, teka, hindi mo na nilalaro yung Amerikano, Ruso at Chinese.
Ah, hmm.
Kami na ang nilalaro.
Kasi parang ang tinitingnan natin dito ngayon ay yung issue nga na kung if we're going to look at what's going on in the South China Sea, we can
Hmm.
see that China is becoming much more aggressive, right? Not just against us, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it's quite interesting that a lot of countries have come out with statements. No, way back in January, for instance, no, Indonesia came out with a statement that denied China's legitimacy, no, to its claims, to the claims that it's making in the South
Hmm.
China Sea, and hinarap nila yung mga ano. I mean, you've got Chinese fishing fleets going to waters that close to waters that Indonesia actually claims as part of its exclusive economic zone. And these were actually being, I think the reports were saying that these were escorted by Chinese Coast Guard ships. Indonesia actually confronted them, right? Sent their own
Yeah.
Coast Guard, no, and to confront them. In other words, Indonesia was actually not willing to let China get its way. Malaysia has
Hmm.
done the same thing. No, Australia has been saying denying the legitimacy of Chinese claims. No, and then of course you've got Mike Pompeo's statement recently. So in other words, countries around the region have been saying, no, have been reacting to China's increasing assertiveness as far as the South China Sea is concerned, and they've actually come out very strongly, stating that they're not accepting China's claims. We're the only player that has a stake on this issue that seems to be very reticent. No, in other words, if we're going to talk about why is it that President Duterte's even his allies seem to be very very concerned about what's going on?
Hmm.
It's because everybody has around the region are reacting to, no, to China. We're the only ones who seem to be saying we surrender. right? The
Mhm.
statement made by the president, no, goes pretty much against the grain of what is going on around the region, no, in terms of reactions to China's activities, no, and claims around the South China Sea. So it would be logical, and I think it behooves us to actually say something along the same lines. You, sorry, you have we have Secretary Locsin saying something, no,
Mhm.
a few weeks ago, but
Yeah.
I think that would have been, if we stop there as far as the South China Sea is concerned, then I think we'd be in a much more comfortable place. But with the president's statement in the SONA, it goes back or brings us back to where we were before. Meaning to say,
Mhm.
a position where we're willing to accept China's activities, not simply because we're saying, ayaw natin makipaggera sa China eh. Di ba?
Okay,
Yun yung,
nabanggit mo yung salitang gera, no? Kasi doon sa SONA, tinagalog pa yata yun ni Presidente, sabi niya, gusto ba ninyong tamaan tayo ng nuclear bomb dito? He essentially was saying that if we align or we confront, if we align with America or allow them to have a base in the Philippines, or have ships in the Philippines, pag nagkaputukan, tayo ang unang puputukan. Or baka ma-nuclear tayo. Ngayon, alam mo, tamad ako sa mga ganyang bagay, pero nung nag-research ako, na-discover ko, all the way back to 1951, nagpuputukan na yung India at China. Nag-away na ang Russia at ang China,
Mhm.
nag-away na ang Taiwan at ang China, etc. And yet, at the end of the day, parang sumubok, parang bully ba? Parang bully na manduduro, mananapak, sa mag-show of force, pero pag lumaban ka ng lumaban,
Oo.
I think in that Russian episode, nung una ginulpi nila yung mga Russia 3 rounds, pag fourth round nagpadala na ng mga bomber yung Russia, atras na yung China. Sa India, recently, I think as recent
Yeah.
as last month, nung nadakma yung kanilang mga tao at pinagbubugbog ng mga Indians at nagkabarilan na at may mga namatay na, biglang sabi nung dalawang panig, teka, baka lumala ito, mag-usap na tayo. I'm not endorsing bloodbath, but
Yeah.
parang I'm questioning, is the president correct in saying that China will just pull the trigger like that? Because I think I'm of the opinion that that's a fallacy.
Actually, it is, no, because he's excuse me, he's reduced things to in terms of our options as far as China is concerned. It's he's reduced things to just a binary between going to war with China, no, or accepting China's dominance, no, in the
Hmm.
region. That's essentially how he has actually framed the whole thing. And I think there's a whole set of possibilities in between the two. Yun yung pinaka ano doon eh. And in framing it that way, parang sinasabi niya wala tayong choice. No, but in fact we do, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we can actually do, but we will have to accept that those things might actually have consequences. And I think that's what he's not prepared to do. And I'm not saying that it's because he's afraid that China is going to go to war with us.
Mhm.
Will hit us with the nuclear weapons. I don't think China is going to do that, right? Not at this point in time. Um, the interesting thing is that he is framing things in that way, right?
Yeah,
Ang
yeah,
ang
but Professor Herman, it just kind of, I have to ask this question. Okay, you pointed out that the economic expectations were never met. The
Yeah.
projects are still on the ground, still hindi nga nakaka-take off. What do we have to lose if we actually confronted China, if we asserted the decision by the courts, international courts,
Yeah.
etc. What do we stand to lose? Anong mawawala sa atin kung ipagtanggol natin yung karapatan natin sa South China Sea or West Philippine Sea?
Honestly speaking, not much at this point in time. Remember when the Scarborough Shoal confrontation actually took place?
Hmm.
Back in 2012, I think it was, or 2010. Nung nagkaroon ng confrontation doon, one of the things that that people were saying might actually happen is that China might actually use economic pressures against us, no?
Hmm.
And natatandaan natin yung saging na nandoon sa port ng China na hindi pinapasok, 'di ba? Yung isang ano
Hmm.
doon. Pero at that point in time, the Philippines was one of the least beholden economically to China. So hindi tayo yung economy natin hindi na ano, despite all of the things that China actually did, we didn't actually suffer economically. In fact, during that time, our economy was still going up
Hmm.
quite well. Ngayon, there's been a change precisely because of the opening up of the Philippines not to Chinese economic entry into the Philippines, no. So kumbaga mas madami ng turista, may mga investors ka na nagpupunta dito, no, and kasama na dito yung mga pinagsasabi natin tungkol sa
Pogo.
pogo. Di ba yung mga ganong
Mm.
klaseng ano.
But
Um
that brings me to the next concern,
yeah.
because China, aside from the crouching tiger attack, yung dadahan-dahanin ka sabay susubukan kang kagatin, meron din silang yung the economic imperialism
Oo.
na papasukin yung mga negosyo, papapuntahin yung mga tao nila dito. I remember in that confrontation with Russia in 1969, I read that when the Russians went to this island of conflict, meron na palang 900 special forces ng China na
Na
na-embed
nandoon.
doon for the longest time. And I remember
Yeah.
early this year or last year, sinabi na ni, I think it was Hermogenesis Peron or some other security expert who said, etong mga taong nagpupunta dito ng mga pogo workers, etc., malamang at malamang People's Liberation Army, and we've arrested a number of them,
Yeah, that's right.
members of the People's Liberation Army. But aren't you worried about that? Na if it's not the slow, crouching tiger approach, it's the economic imperialism, pero yung pala mga sleepers ang pinadadala dito.
Well, yung Second World War, isang kwento yan, di ba? Parang mga hardinero na ayun pala nung dumating yung mga Hapon dito, mga ano pala sila.
Kernel pala ng
Oo, di ba?
Japanese Imperial
Those,
Army.
those are stories that and I wouldn't be
No, no, they're
surprised.
not. They're not
Oh,
stories, Herman. Let's make the younger generation understand this.
aware of that, yeah.
Yeah, aware of it, because para
Uh,
po sa inyo na mga bata na hindi nyo nadinig yung mga storya na yan, tanungin nyo yung mga lolo ninyo. Sa Baguio, meron kaming kakilala, isang umaga, yung lolo nila nagkwento nito. Isang umaga, yung meron silang, Mr. Sato, you fix my garden, ganyan-ganyan. One morning, Mr. Sato appeared in full military with samurai.
yeah.
He is now Colonel Sato. Of the Imperial Army. So, yun ang pinoproblema natin.
Oo, actually hindi ano 'yon, no. Those are serious issues that we need to be concerned about. I'm not I'm not I don't think that talking about the idea that China will invade us in the same way that the Japanese actually did in the Second World
Hmm.
War, no, is something that we should take seriously. Um, the way I see it, what China would be interested in is basically undermining us. No, in terms of a number of things, our relationship with the United States, undermining our capacity to actually resist, no, build the kind of decision making that would resist China's initiatives, no, in the South China Sea. In other words, the idea is to make us weak, no, as far as resisting them in what they do around the region. So in that sense, no, like I said, um, whether he understands it or not, no, President Duterte is acting as that particular agent that weakens us as far as our capacity to assert our autonomy, no, within a region where China is increasingly becoming the dominant power, right? So yun yung isang bagay na kailangan natin pag-isipan ng mabuti, no?
Okay. Kasi
And I think
go ahead. No, no, kasi
sorry,
alam mo,
yung
bigla ko
pag sinabi ng presidente na
oh,
oh, oo,
naalala ko
kasi
bigla
parang
yung
pag sinabi ng
nakasulat
presidente
do'n
na
na
inutil siya, yun.
oh, it's scary.
Yeah, no, totoo 'yun, no? Kaya parang I think we should be worried when the president says na inutil siya doon sa mga
Actually,
bagay na 'yan.
Professor, I will give the benefit of the doubt to the president. Kanya lang, the reason I started up this topic today is what worries me is when his allies and supporters are worried and start issuing statements of
Yeah.
concern. Medyo teka-teka.
Mm.
Mukhang may problema at dapat mapag-usapan. In any case, Professor,
Oo.
thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm sure matatawagan ka pa namin madalas-dalas in the coming days. And I wish you good luck on your online adjustment for the academic year.
Oo.
Uh, Pare-pareho naman tayo hindi techie, so
Oo nga.
pare-pareho tayong magdusa.
Well,
Pero
thank you for having me. Maraming salamat. Oo.
okay, have a good weekend, Professor Herman Kraft, and stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and God bless you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's Professor Herman Kraft, and there you go. Just so we're clear about this, when media people start commenting, pwede nyo naman sabihin, hindi, makulit lang yan si Beltran, ganito. Pero hindi po ako mahilig dyan sa mga South China Sea issue na yan. Hindi ako mahilig dyan sa mga geopolitics na yan. Pero alam nyo, pag medyo natataranta o nagsasalita na yung mga senador na kaalyado ni Presidente, mga tao na nagsasabing sandali, mukhang mali yung ginawa na yun sa SONA, then we have to really call attention to it. And what we're trying to do with the Herman Kraft is bring light and correct misimpressions. Hindi po basta-basta makikipaggera ang China, katulad din ng Amerika. Magkukulitan yan, magapopormahan, mag-aastahan yan, maghihiritan yan. But at the end of the day, they know better, and some idiots might pull guns, might shoot each other, trigger happy military people, but at the end of the day, or soldiers, I mean, but at the end of the day, the leaders, the diplomats, they'll all come together just like they did in India, and when China and India started shooting at each other over a border conflict. We'll go for a quick break. When we return, we'll go to our next guest from the emergency room of the Makati Medical Center here on Agenda. Okay, you're back here on Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, as well as the One News page on Facebook and on on YouTube. Okay. A lot of you on Facebook have been reacting to the new way of presenting the statistics for COVID-19. Kasi in one case, medyo maraming nag-react na 3,000 plus. I don't know, I think it was, let me check here. Ayun, 3,954 cases in one day. Pagkatapos, meron ng 38,000 recoveries, total 65,000 na ang nakarecover. Biglang pinag-piestahan yan sa Facebook because some people are questioning bakit biglang ang daming nakarecover overnight, etc. Well, we will look into that in the coming days. But for now, let's find out what's really the situation in the scene, okay, in the front lines with the, excuse me, with the, our next guest. He is the Associate Active Staff at the Department of Emergency Medicine of the Makati Medical Center. He is also a diplomat of the Philippine College of Emergency Medicine, Dr. Mark Paul Castillo. Dr. Mark, good morning.
Morning, sir. Morning.
Okay, relax lang tayo, Dr. Mark. Wala naman tayong o-operahan ngayon. Eh. Okay. I get it. You know, you guys aren't used to TV, etc. But I just want to find out. So, how is life now at the ER? Kasi you know, March, April, para kang pumapasok na kailangan may napirmahan ka ng last will and testament. Eh, ngayon ba, kamusta naman yung lagay ng mga frontliners?
So far, currently, our situation in Makati Medical Center or in our emergency department is somehow almost the same nung March when we had this the first surge of cases. No,
Mhm.
difference lang this time is that we are now more prepared. I think we know somehow about the disease. But the problem is there are a lot of cases now compared to March. So we every day, so it's a struggle every day that you wake up and then you go to work to see different faces but the same situation. So parang um, before the pandemic it would be parang new cases every day because different disease entities yung
Mm.
nakikita sa emergency department, but now it's almost every day it's almost the same story. I think the state of healthcare workers now are um, we as much as we would want to help, we also need to rest, and
Yeah.
we also need to recuperate for us to care more of other
Y-
people.
Yeah, but Doc Mark, what is the situation? Kasi of course kayo private hospital, presumably you're better run, better managed. But I remember when I looked back at the recommendations of the Chinese delegation back in April, 'di ba nagpadala sila ng 12-man medical team sa Pilipinas to assess our actions, our programs, and they made recommendation. And one of their recommendations back then, sabi nila, kung kaya ninyo, limit ninyo yung working hours ng frontliners to 4 hours lang. Kasi hindi nyo pwedeng pahabain ang trabaho ng frontline workers na ganyan ka-intense. Kung hindi, babagsak ang mga katawan at dyan mag-uumpisa yung mga infections. Apparently, we did not heed those recommendations. There were frontliners working up to 16 hours, and the excuse or the reason was because we don't have that many frontliners. Kayo po sa Makati Med, how are you guys faring? Because from according to DOH sources, parang nagkakaubusan na ng health workers sa dami ng mga kailangang asikasuhin, kapos na ang health workers.
Okay. Fortunately, in Makati Medical Center, we have planned for this. So we have
Mhm.
different tier levels for this. So if in case the frontliners get sick, the first tier gets sick, then there's an on call, there's a second tier, there's a third tier, and fortunately also we haven't had activated the second tier. So among us, among the emergency department consultants and residents, we can fairly manage the working hours.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, if we go like this for how many for so more months, I don't know what will happen. So
Mhm.
it's really the control and the prevention that will help the healthcare workers as well. Kasi parang we have just accepted the fact that we don't have enough healthcare workers or healthcare professionals. But
Oh.
I think we can do something to help them.
Okay, now, kanina sinabi mo, compared to March, it's basically the same except that you now know better, you have more equipment, you better manage the treatment options and handling of cases. Now, ang nagbago ka mo, sobrang dami ng mga cases. In terms of numbers, for everyone in March, how many are there in July, August, or July?
Last March, I think in the emergency department, we screen or we see about 30 to 40 patients. Okay, most of them, the positivity rate of those patients is around 10 to 12%. But now we screen in the emergency department about 70 patients a day, 70 to 80 patients a day, only in the
Double.
emergency department. So
Oh.
those are the symptomatic ones. So
Mhm.
we get to see the asymptomatic ones. So about 70 to 80 patients per screening a day, and the positivity rate is about 15 to 20%.
So March, you were seeing about 30 to 40.
Yeah,
July, you are seeing 70 to 80. In March, the positivity rate was about 4%, kamo.
10 to
Uh,
12
sorry, 10 to 12 or 4 individuals. And now it is how many? 15%.
to 20, about 15 to
15
20.
to 20%. So medyo talagang malala. Ngayon, how do you guys manage? Because Mr. Manny Pangilinan made the commitment na dadagdagan nila yung mga emergency beds para ma-expand yung COVID response. Paano yan? Are you going to create a triage outside the hospital or are you going to convert wings? Paano ba raw yan? Sa ER?
Oh, okay, in our current setting, since January, we have screening triage outside of the emergency department complex. No? So about in March or April, we have created a separate unit for those having respiratory symptoms. We call it
Mm.
our or acute respiratory care unit. So for those having symptoms, they are triaged there in that area, and then the emergency department now is divided into two zones. We have the hot zone and the cold zone. The cold zone caters to those not having symptoms of COVID. The hot zones caters to those having COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
Both zones or the three areas are equipped with nurses, with doctors, with equipment. However, in the past days, since the end of June, the hot zone is quite overwhelmed because of the number of patients that come in. So recently, we the hospital declared full capacity for COVID-19 cases. So aside from the equipment, the manpower, we also talk to each other. I mean, it's not just emergency department; it's multi-specialty or interdepartmental um, interdepartmental communication. So
Yeah.
recently we had every 4 o'clock in the afternoon we meet with other specialties like critical care, infectious disease, emergency, the
Mhm.
nurse leaders, for us to see how is our rooms, do we have available beds, do we have critical
Mhm.
care beds. So we get to triage them. I mean, we get to assign these patients. These patients need critical care. He has good prognosis. Then we might
But
offer to,
yeah,
to him.
yeah, that conference that you're referring to, I think is essential because that's the time when the unexpected or the unknown also crop up. Because I know that it was in conferencing that other physicians abroad were able to indicate, teka, alam mo, may bata ako naging pasyente, ganito yung symptoms sa pediatrics, pero COVID-19 positive? Is there a connection? So that's what you're doing now. You're also doing conferencing. And then I know kayong mga doktor, because you're so passionate about the comfort and care for your patients, syempre naglalaban din kayo sa logistics, lalo na yung mga kwarto.
Yes.
Pinag-aawayan ba ngayon yung mga beds ng mga doktor?
That,
Kasi
that's why that's
yeah.
why we meet every day via web-based meeting, to determine and then to settle. Okay, so we have about 4 available beds. To whom do we give this? Who needs more monitoring? Will that unit be able to handle this case? Are they not overwhelmed? So if they are overwhelmed, we pass it to another unit. So
Mhm.
it's like it's how we manage the everyday course of the disease and of the patients.
Okay, now what is the secret of Makati Med? Okay, alam ko ER ka, so you cannot speak for all the other departments, ano? But fair is fair. I want people to hear the good news also. And I've heard good news about, Makati Med ER na mataas ang survival rate, matindi yung care protocol, etc. Ano ba ang secret ninyo diyan? Kasi ewan ko ba kayong mga doktor, ayaw niyo mag-open up sa akin, gumagamit ba kayo ng hydroxychloroquine, azithromax, etc. Kasi parang if there is supposed to be no cure for COVID-19, then how come patients leave Makati Med better than when they came?
Okay. So when this disease came about, and we had lots of patients during that time, we didn't know the treatment. Up to now we don't know the treatment for COVID-19.
Mhm.
What we can do is to read and to base it on other evidences, or on other studies done elsewhere. So it's evidence-based medicine. So we before, as you mentioned, are we giving hydroxychloroquine? Because before, hydroxychloroquine was thought to be good,
Mm.
but studies now say that it didn't establish any effect. So
Mhm.
in the solidarity trial of sponsored by WHO and DOH, Makatimed is one of the hospitals participating in that trial. So one of the arms there is actually hydroxychloroquine. But when they noticed that it didn't work, they stopped the arm, and then they gave standard of care and the other arms as well.
Mhm.
So for now, we still don't have the correct. I mean the cure, but we are guided with different
So
evidences from other,
So,
like
bale
remdesivir.
ang nangyayari, you are treating symptoms as they appear. So if there's pneumonia, you treat pneumonia. If there is inflammation, you treat inflammation. Hindi yung you're not treating COVID-19, you are treating the
The symptoms.
symptoms of the patient.
Yes, and
Okay.
preventing complications. Because, for example, at an early onset, when we see them in the emergency room, they have low oxygenation in the blood. No, so we try to first to give non-invasive ways such as face mask, high flow nasal cannula. But
Mhm.
And then one of the strategies that I think has a good outcome is what we call proning. We ask patients cooperation when we ask them, for example, to lie down or to lie face down with
Nakataob.
nakataob for
Mm.
about 2 hours and then lie on the side. So the studies have shown that it it gives more oxygen to the lungs. So
Ayun.
somehow you do not treat the COVID, but you treat the complication of it na you are having low oxygen in your blood.
Okay. Marami naman papayag na na Doc kasi Doc Mark kasi alam mo maraming Pilipino sanay sa masahe. 'Di ba? Nakataob sila lagi, nakadapa.
Actually, when I
Okay.
my patients, yan yung sinasabi ko, sir.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, Doc Mark Castillo, thank you very much for joining us this morning. At least may update tayo na confirming na dumadami talaga ang kaso and therefore so many, all of us have to take care, wear mask, do social distancing. And sana po patuloy kayo mag-ingat at manggamot dyan sa Makati Medical Center. Have a good day, Doc.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Stay safe,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay, thank you, Doc Mark. And yan po, Doc Mark Paul Castillo, Associate Active Staff ng Department of Emergency Medicine at Makati Medical Center. Now, yun lang po, no? What's important? We do these features because may confirmation eh. Doon sa Makati Medical, private hospital yan, one of the best in the country. Alam mo, dati nung tiga Makati kami, dyan din kami pumupunta. Eh, ang problema, hindi nalalaman kasi ng tao how real are the cases. Unless may mamatay sa kamag-anak mo o makita mo talagang sinundo na ng barangay ambulance yung kapitbahay mo, medyo hindi pa tayo nakasigurong, ano yan, hindi naman ganun kasama. Especially with a lot of conflicting information and news. But, you know, when you start talking to doctors, and they tell you that in March, we would have 40 patients show up, and of 40, there would be 4 positive COVID cases. But now, July, we would have 80 patients show up, and there would be, a dozen to 15 of them would be COVID positive. Kasi pasensya na kayo sa math ko, mahina ako sa math eh. Then, it tells you na dumoble ang dami. Hindi kumonte, dumoble ang dami ng mga nagkakasakit. And one good news is napapagaling naman. Yung pong lumabas ngayon na issue kasi pasensya na kayo, no? Medyo may mga taong ng gobyerno na namimili ng kakausapin, so masyado raw maaga yung programa natin. Or may gag order daw. So hindi namin matanong talaga, ano ba yung batayan nitong mga sinasabing pagbabago sa statistics ng COVID-19. In any case, let's go to a report from our kagrupo. Kagrupo bigla eh. No? We have our correspondent Ryan Gregorio from TV5 and he will be talking about the occupancy rate, temporary treatment and monitoring facilities for COVID-19. Let's find out more. News 5 correspondent Greg Gregorio. What? Sinabi ko bang Ryan? Greg, sinabi ko bang Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Pasensya ka
That's
na.
fine, sir.
Alam mo,
No worries, sir.
na, kasi puro basketball yung nakikita ko kanina. In any case, Greg, what are you covering right now? Department of Health ba o yung mga IATF response?
So lately, we've been covering the IATF response as well as the DOH's report about the occupancy rate of our temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, as well as the occupancy rate then po of
Okay.
the hospital beds naman
Sige.
doon sa
Alam,
Yeah.
Alam mo, baka biglang pumasok si Presidente, kanya sige, mauna ka na, mag-report ka na muna, Greg.
Yes, Sito, after the health department reported that the occupancy rate in some of the country's biggest temporary treatment and monitoring facilities have reached the danger zone, the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases, or the IATF, promised that a solution is already on the way. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Secretary Vince Dizon said they have already identified isolation hotels as additional facilities for COVID-19 patients. Dizon also adds that the Razon Group has also offered to help the government build a 500-bed capacity mega quarantine facility in Parañaque City. Apart from this, we are also set to have an additional 500 beds once the Phase 4 of the Mega Drug Rehab Center in Fort Magsaysay starts operation as a quarantine facility. The Department of Public Works and Highways is also preparing 22 additional quarantine facilities for NCR alone. And DPWH spokesperson Ana May Lamentillo said this is equivalent to more than 2,000 bed capacity. The Department of Health earlier reported that as of July 26, the occupancy rate of 5 out of the 14 mega temporary treatment and monitoring facilities in the country is at the danger zone, 3 of which are in the NCR, while the other 2 are in Region 3. The Rizal Memorial Coliseum is at 94.8%. The Ultra Stadium is at 77.3%. The Quezon Institute is at 86.6%. The Philippine Arena Tent in Bulacan at 88%. And the ASEAN Convention Center in Clark at 88.8%. Cito, in a text statement, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara said that the increase of the number of patients in these areas are mostly due to the implementation of the Oplan Kalinga and the one hospital command system, which both facilitates the transfer of an individual from a hospital to another or to a quarantine facility. This after the IATF thumbed down the conduct of a home quarantine, especially if a certain positive, mild, and asymptomatic individual cannot do the home quarantine without the ideal location. Sito?
Okay, well, thanks for that, Greg. Now, ang tanong, Greg, no, yung bang sinasabing one hospital concept, no, yung one hospital command system, para ba yung Grab na sila lang yung tatawagan mo or ite-text mo at sila yung papadala sa ng sasakyan or something. I mean, you know, in terms of function, are they like a ano ba tawag doon? App?
Sito, as how it was explained by the Department of Health, it is some sort of a network system among hospitals, both public and private hospitals. Na if an individual needs to be admitted in a hospital, but unfortunately that hospital happens to be at full capacity already, they will have to coordinate with the RESU or other hospitals as to where could this individual be transferred to for his or her admission. Pero the DOH is emphasizing that before the transfer, that hospital must give the initial treatment first para doon sa individual bago siya ilipat. Now with this hospital command system, they could assure or ensure na magkakaroon talaga ng space itong individual na ito, whether to another hospital or to a quarantine facility.
Okay, well, I'll have to end it at that, Greg. Tatanungin sana kita tungkol dun sa scoring system na bago galing DOH, but the President has started his speech. So thank you very much for joining us, and please stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy.
Thank you, Sito.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's Greg Gregorio of TV5, and we turn over the air to the speech of President Rodrigo Duterte.
Except for the authority. Mga opisina niya dito, Pfizer, Moderna, for the public, I promise you, by the grace